So I want to read something, just a short paragraph that has haunted me for a number of years. And this is what it has to say. Here's the heading or the title. Daddy, may I have this dance? Can we dance the night away? Will you twirl me in your arms like you did to Mama on your wedding day? I remember when I was 3 years old, begging for a story of a witch's charm. You would take me in your arms and twirl me around in the air until I would cry. Then you would try to comfort me by saying, Daddy's here to stay. The day you left Mama and I cried. At night, I would look into the sky and always remembered what you always told me. So I'm begging you, Daddy, may I have the stance? These words for years were posted on the wall in the county jail in Washington County, Wisconsin, where I live and where I'm now doing this video. They were written by a teenage girl that was incarcerated in the jail. That wall, as you go into the jail, was set up so the inmates or people doing time there could post little pieces of artwork. Apparently, it gave them something to do and an outlet and so forth. I don't know if you would call this art, but I know what it is. It was a heart cry of a wounded child. I spent a dozen years going into that jail, dealing with juveniles, normally ages 13 to 17, who had gotten in trouble with the legal system and were incarcerated there, mostly while their cases were being processed through and so forth. And a couple things they had in common. Virtually every one of them was out of a broken home. There was only a handful out of hundreds that I dealt with that were living in a home with both their natural parents. They were virtually all products of our public education system. There was only a couple, because I used to ask, that had ever crossed the threshold of a private school or been homeschooled. Overwhelmingly, 99% anyway, were products of our public education system. I would go in and try and do Bible studies with them. Didn't take long before I stopped asking people to read the Bible because it embarrassed them. Half these kids, 13 to 17, couldn't read. So I'd ask for a volunteer if somebody felt comfortable reading a verse or whatnot. There was a point where I wrote down a Bible verse for a gal and put it on a piece of paper and slid it over to her so she could have it. She looked at it and said, "That's cursive. I can't read that." Okay. These kids are damaged and they're wounded. One of the other things that really drives them is trauma. Their status quo, their worldview, and their sense of security is shattered. And before they have time to heal and grieve through the trauma, let's say, of the breakup of their marriage, their parents' marriage, they get hit with another trauma and another and another. And you end up with all these wounds that don't heal. So we go into that situation and try and bring the love of God to them and let them know there is a God. He loves you. And there's healing from all of this. I had a style of ministry when I went in there that I just kind of fell into it and it evolved. I didn't plan on this. Um, but it was grounded in simply telling them the truth and dealing with them where they were at. So I would go in there and sit and talk and say, okay, why are you here? What'd you do? Where does it hurt? And then speak truth into their lives. Just simple truth, unvarnished truth. And here's what happened. A lot of them got mad, really mad over the years. Lots of them walked out. They didn't have to be there. They could have stayed in their cells. And a lot of them came just to get out of their cells for a while. But I tell them the truth anyway. This is why it hurts. This is how to fix it. This is what's going on. It's not pretty, but this is reality. And here's the thing. Most of those kids that were in there in trouble with the law are some of the strongest and bravest people I've ever met. They were dealt a terrible hand, and they decided, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to play this hand on the terms that the world gave me. And so they rebel and they act out and they get in trouble, not because they're bad kids, but because they're strong kids trying to survive, and nobody's brought them onto a path of reconciliation with God and genuine healing from all the wounds that have been inflicted on them. Here's what happened over time. A lot of those kids, most of the kids, when you sit down and start speaking blunt truth into their lives, their first reaction is resistance or anger or denial. And some of them walk out. But over time, they realize this guy's telling me something that's true and I need to hear it. And honestly, there were times where you could actually see the veil lift and their focus would clear up. They'd become engaged in the discussions. And ultimately, before I got thrown out of that ministry for telling the truth, by the way, I had kids thanking me for coming in there. I had kids saying, you know what? I'm in a good place here rather than outside because I'm hearing things that I wouldn't hear out there. This is what truth does. God gave us all a conscience to know right from wrong and to know truth when we hear it. Truth, unvarnished, is designed to penetrate the heart, prick the conscience, and get a reaction. A lot of times that reaction is going to be anger or denial or defensiveness. But for a lot of people, that truth is going to prick their conscience and lead to conviction. I'm hearing something that I need to hear and I need to deal with it. That's how God works. I have absolutely no gift to be going in and ministering to a bunch of juveniles. Kind of a juvenile myself. So that would have been like the blind leading the blind. We don't have to be all that smart. We don't have to come in with this fancy game plan. We just need to speak the truth. And over time, people are going to recognize that you're speaking the truth, not because you're judging, but you're speaking the truth because you care. A good friend of mine has a girlfriend. They've been together forever. And they're middle-aged now. Anyway, the girlfriend some time ago stopped going to church. And after an extended period of time, she got a letter from the church saying, "We've noticed that you haven't been there. If you still want us to carry you as a member, please respond to this letter and let us know." She didn't respond. A while later, she got another letter saying, "We're removing you from the membership role, but if you want to come back, make an appointment and come talk to us." Well, the good news is somebody at that church noticed she was missing. The other side of that coin, and this is going to hurt. This whole video is going to hurt. I can't help that. It hurts me too. I don't want to be talking about it. So anyway, the church noticed she was missing, which is a good thing. But the other side of that coin is that church has 3 pastors on staff, 6 elders, and an even dozen deacons and deaconesses. These are the spiritual nucleus and leadership of that church. What's wrong with that picture? Is it not possible that these spiritual leaders, at least one of them, knowing that my friend had not been in church, would be prompted in his heart as a shepherd to say, "You know what? Maybe I should give her a call. How you doing? More importantly, where does it hurt? And what can we do?" That didn't happen. We play church while our family members are fighting battles that we know nothing about. And we don't want to intrude, particularly with truth, because truth is hard and it offends people. Here's the problem. The key problem, I believe, of the church in America today is we're afraid of offending people. It might drive them away. The problem is Jesus said, "My gospel is offensive. People are going to throw rocks at you." So we build our churches and our church experience. We have our band up on stage. And we coach our band members. We want you to express yourself and show the love of God while you're singing and praising and leading praise, but not too much. Don't get carried away with this, okay? By the way, with all these electrical musical instruments, we've got all these electrical cords running across the stage, and our service is being live streamed. All these cords and clutter shows up on camera, so we need to clean that up. By the way, Joe's no longer on our team. We had to ask him to step down because he doesn't show up for practice, and he's actually missed a couple church services. This in spite of the fact that Joe has been on that praise team for 15 years, and this is his act of worship and service. Joe's got a crippled wife at home. Joe's got a job that works long, demanding hours, and he doesn't know from one day to the next exactly what time he's going to get home. He's tired most of the time. And Joe's got his own problems. Given everything he's dealing with, he's also dealing with a diagnosis of clinical depression. He's on medication. This is Joe's outlet. It's his active service and worship. It's also a way for him to find some peace and escape. But Joe's having a hard time getting to practice. Joe doesn't fit anymore. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with us? The leadership I'm talking about, these are good people. They love God. They want to serve God and follow Jesus. But we're blinded. And we're so busy playing church now that we're clueless to the fact that our people are hurting. They're still carrying around open wounds, and a lot of them, out of our sight, are fighting battles that we don't even know about. And they are alone, and they are not in church, and they're out on the battlefield bleeding out while we play church. This is not a fun message. I don't like it, but I'm going to persist. In 1973, Supreme Court, which is the ultimate interpreter of the law of the land, came out with a decision on abortion, Roe v. Wade. This is a Supreme Court, and they don't make mistakes, right? 50 years and at least 50 million dead babies later, here we are. And those numbers are conservative because there's at least 3 states that don't report their abortions to the CDC, so they're not counted. I think it's New York, California, and New Hampshire. So the number is probably something over 70 million dead babies. Those are only the fatalities. That doesn't count the walking wounded. That are left to deal with the decisions that they made. I'm going to be absolutely blunt. This is going to hurt, but I want to ask you to consider that I'm not talking like this in a spirit of condemnation. I'm bringing this up as an invitation to deal with the things that have wounded and trapped and enslaved us, to get them out into the light of day, deal with them, and heal. The fact is, millions and millions of parents are out there with festering wounds because they killed their baby. That's a decision that they cannot undo. And it's not just mothers. I'm quite certain that there's a lot of, and we don't hear about the fathers ever, but I'm quite sure there's a lot of fathers out there that are carrying these wounds as well. And the way we deal with it is to suppress it, to deny it, and to seek validation for the decisions that we made. That validation comes in the form of building in cultural and political narrative that says, my body, my choice. This is my right. This is my health. This is my choice. And we pound that narrative and pound it to validate us. If the world we live in builds this narrative long enough, we don't have to worry about the guilt or the shame. But here's the problem. Those narratives, my body, my choice, that's bullshit. And those narratives are developed by people in the background who are patently evil, want us enslaved and manipulated, and wouldn't mind seeing us dead, because a lot of us are what they consider useless eaters. And here's the heart of it. All the validation in the world isn't going to heal that wound. You can bury it as deep as you like, but it's still there. You're still bleeding inside, even if you no longer recognize it, because those wounds are going to present themselves in other ways. You may be able to convince yourself that everything's okay, but it's not, because you may end up with an anger issue. You can't live with yourself and you don't know why, and you're constantly lashing out. You may end up with a judgmental nature because you're afraid somebody's judging you. How dare you challenge my body, my choice? May have problems with depression. Whatever it is, the stuff that we harbor inside of us is going to fester, and it's going to continue to damage and cripple and wound us until we deal with it. And the reason this is not a judgmental message is because there's healing. Our problem is that the people that are supposed to help us heal are too busy playing church. They're too busy playing church because they don't want to offend anybody. They're afraid if they offend somebody, it's going to turn them away from the gospel. That's not how it works. Jesus said, I'm going to be very offensive. When you stand up for the truth, my truth, people are going to get mad. They're going to throw rocks at you. They're going to persecute you. But we have to do it because it's that truth that penetrates the heart, pricks the conscience, and gets a reaction which says in their heart of hearts, I needed to hear this, and I need to deal with this. I'm here doing this video, which I hate. And by the way, this church leadership that I'm so busy criticizing, a lot of them are friends of mine, first of all. Secondly, there's not a doubt in my mind that they love God and they're following Jesus. They want to do the right things. Many of these people are much more godly and more decent people than I am, honestly. But we're going about all this in the wrong way because we don't recognize that our weapons are spiritual and they're grounded in truth. This is demonic. It's got us all entangled. And I use abortion as an example because it's so graphic, but we've all got these strongholds in our life, things that haven't been dealt with and need to be dealt with. And here's what Jesus had to say in John 8. He said, I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. He also said, I came to set the captives free. Here's what he said in John 8, verse 31. Jesus speaking again. This is not too long before they killed him, by the way. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Jesus went on. He said, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. The slave doesn't remain in the household forever. In other words, they're not part of the family. But the Son remains forever. And so who the Son sets free is free indeed. The antidote for all this, the healing for all this, is to deal with it. There is a point, every one of us, if we want to get free, is going to have the courage to stand in front of a mirror, look ourselves squarely in the eye, and say, it's me. It's not how my parents raised me. It's not the bullies that called me names. It's not the racism that's persecuting me because I'm Black. It's not my rights that are being suppressed because I'm a woman. It's me. And here's why. The rest are all excuses where we give up control of our lives to other people and remain enslaved. If I blame you for my problems, I'm going to sit on my hands and demand that you fix my problems. What are the odds that that's going to happen? We need to start with a place of absolute honesty with ourselves as Christians and say, it's me. These are the strongholds and the places I'm wounded. Let's bring them out of the dark and into the light. The word occult, and a lot of this stuff is, most of it's spiritual. There are spiritual entities attacking us. That's not a popular sentiment in our material world. Demons are real. And if they sense a weakness in you, a wound that hasn't been dealt with, a sin that hasn't been brought out into the light, they're going to move in and they're going to feed off all those weak areas, and they're going to bring their friends. The word occult means hidden, secret. We need to bring healing into all of our lives and deal with the stuff that's had us entangled, even the stuff that we don't recognize, because if it hasn't been dealt with, it's still there, it's still festering, it's still enslaving us, and it's showing up in other ways, how we face the world, the bitterness that we carry, the anger, the judgmental spirit, all these things that rob us of our peace. They're because we've got these wounds that we haven't healed from. We need to look in the mirror, all of us, be honest with ourselves, say, Lord, I'm a sinner, not generically. Lord, I repent of my sins. Please forgive me, and then move on with our day. We need to look at ourselves and say, okay, what does that sin look like? What do I have to deal with? Bring it out into the light. Take it before God. Acknowledge it. Seek forgiveness for it. And then get help. The help should come from our churches. We don't do a good job at all of our treating our wounded. We preach salvation, come into a relationship with Jesus Christ, but we don't bring healing and deliverance. Here's my contention. I can't prove this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. We've got all these different denominations, all following Jesus in a little different way, a little different understanding of, church doctrine and so forth. And I'm not talking about the cults. There are cults out there that are heretical and do need to be avoided. And I'll name them: the Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and so forth. They're not following the Christ of the Bible. But most of our traditional churches that have issues still have Jesus Christ as the centerpiece of their faith, and they're trying to follow him, knowing that he died for our sins and rose again, and our salvation rests in him. The way we follow him gets a little confusing depending on what church or denomination you're at. But they're trying to follow Christ. Here's the thing, though. Most of our churches are not doing a good job of treating their wounded because they don't want to deal with hard truth. I believe, and here's the part that I'm speculating on, I believe that God himself has embedded people in all these different churches and all these different denominations He has embedded people and gifted them for service. Our elders, I don't believe, should be appointed by our leadership. I think our elders should be recognizing people who are elders organically because they've been serving in our elder capacity without a label. And I believe God has people like that embedded in all his churches to walk with us as we try and deal with these sins and strongholds. The Apostle Peter tells us that a man is a slave to whatever controls him. And we've done such a good job of suppressing all these sins and strongholds and wounds rather than dealing with them. We build narratives to seek validation rather than bring them out into the light and deal with them. Here's an application to all this, in my opinion. If you want to get free and find peace with God and peace with yourself, you need to look inward, ask yourself, what doesn't belong in my life? Where does it still hurt? Find someone spiritual that you can trust with all this shame and all this guilt and bring it out into the open. Find that person or persons who are going to walk with you, who are going to hear your story and say, I know where you're at. And I'll walk with you. I'll stick with you. In fact, you don't look all that heavy. If I have to, I'll carry you for a while. Such people exist, but we have to look around and find them. Look around your church. If you're at a church social, you ever notice that there might be some guy sitting in a corner engaged in an intense conversation with somebody that nobody else ever notices? Who's the guy that comes up to you on Sunday morning and says, how you doing? You look a little down today. Are you okay? Find the shepherds. Be careful who you confess your sins to. There's nothing more damaging in a church body than to try and bring all this stuff out into the open to get it dealt with and find out you've told the wrong person. And now it's a product of gossip. That is so destructive. But yet we have to do it. We have to deal with truth. It's truth that does God's work. You know, I go into that jail. I didn't have any great plan of how I'm going to even do this. You know, it wasn't about going in and telling nice Bible stories or finding a 3-point way to evangelize somebody because somebody wrote a book and said, this is the procedure you follow. It's about building a relationship with these people as human beings. Where are you at? Why are you here? What happened? You want to talk about it? And then as their story unfolds, speak God's truth into it. And as Christians, we need to do that for one another. We need to get this stuff out of the darkness and into the light. If we do that, people are going to heal. And the other thing is, the world will notice how we take care of people. And it's not about practicing church. It's about following Christ, loving our God, and loving one another. So I don't like talking about church leadership in this way, particularly when a lot of them are friends of mine, and a lot of them really are better people than I am, but we've got it wrong. We do. We don't want to offend anybody. Truth is offensive. Tell yourself the truth and start dealing with this stuff by getting it out into the light of day and confessing it, surrendering it to the power of God, and finding these shepherds that will walk with you and not betray your trust. And find genuine healing. And here's the bottom line, the punchline. You will never be able to forgive yourself until you learn what mercy looks like by practicing mercy to others. If there's any unforgiveness in your spirit, choose to forgive and practice it. Anyway, that would be my opinion, and I'm pretty sure it's consistent with the Bible. This is hard work, but we're leaving too many people wounded and bleeding. And it's truth that'll set them free. And we need to speak it and live it out and do a lot better job of taking care of people. So thank you for watching.